Yes, this is still spring, but it's a beautiful spring day, almost like summer. Temperatures in the mid-20s, and it's only going to get warmer. So, yep, forgive me, it is me, as if you didn't know. Yes, so welcome to Semaphore. I suppose the question on today is, there's probably several of these videos where there's been pure blue sky, middle of the day, and you're probably wondering why I'm out here. Well, that's because rather than wait for that elusive sunset or sunrise, I thought we'd try a little technique and see if we can create some beautiful images in the middle of the day. So let me get on with it, and then we'll talk you through what we're going to do today. So what we're aiming to shoot is this little lifeguard hut that sits proud above the dunes and overlooks the sea. Now, I've been here before. I think I photographed it once before, along with the jetty, which is just to our right. It's in a little place called Semaphore. I think you'd agree that normally just taking a snap of that would look pretty boring. Although the yellow against the blue is quite pretty, and the contrast with the yellow and the green of those bushes. So I think overall it's a very limited colour palette, but it's a very pleasing one. So I am going to take this. I'm not going to wait the 5 hours or so that I've got to wait till sunset. I'm going to take this, but I'm going to take it in a particular way that I think will enhance it and create something a little unique. So let me get on set up, and then we'll get back on and join you. Okay, so what have we got here? Let me just very quickly just set ourselves up. Now today's a particularly good day for this, I think, because we've got no cloud. It's sort of what I wanted to experiment with. I wanted to see if I could come up with something interesting, something quite interesting without any clouds. So I'm just centering. So yeah, so what we have here is this this wonderful little tower, as you can see. So what I've done is I've just centered it, so I know where the center of this composition is, and I'm just going to probably focus on just on that first level. Now I'm focusing on that first level because I'm going to take several images of this little tower, and I'm going to blend them together. I'll take you through that later on, but those of you who have been following my channel for a little while have seen me use the Pep Ventosa technique before on trees, and today I wanted to see how it would work, how it would fare against the man-made structure. So that's what I'm going to do, and that's the reason why I wanted clear sky, because I wanted to be able to play and experiment with the structure itself rather than be distracted by the clouds in the background. It's not to say this wouldn't be a beautiful setting at sunset, but it's just something that I wanted to work on. So I'm just going to zoom in just slightly. So I'm at 30, I think 34. There's 20 to 35, so about 35 million. And yeah, that looks right. The histogram looks pretty okay. So if we just have a little look at the histogram. Oh, we are at f22, so maybe we want a little bit less than that. Am I on? I'm on shutter priority. Let's go back to manual. Okay, that makes much more sense, doesn't it? And let's have a little look at what we've got now. Let's make sure that we keep our focus spot on that first level, because as I go round, I'm going to photograph probably about 20 or 30 images, and I'm going to go round this little hut, taking images as we go, probably every 2 or 3 steps. and then take an image. And I want to know whereabouts that I'm focusing so that I can focus on the same point all the way around. Now I'm at f14, I'm happy with that. I can probably bring this ISO down a bit. So ISO 100, and that's giving me a 50th of a second. That's perfectly adequate for what we're going to do here. So I think we can just make a start with that. And I'm using a remote shutter. I could use a 2-second timer, but the remote shutter's fine. So we will just focus on that, and done. And now we'll just shift ourselves. So we'll just shift up and round to the right and make our way around to the other side of this structure, taking images along the way. So I'll take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots. There, 4 steps. And now I'll just line this back up so it's approximately the same as it was before. And you don't really have to worry. I could do this handheld, and I have done this handheld. I actually did this with my phone. So at the end of this, I'll show you this one, and I'll show you what I did on the phone as well. Because it's a great technique, and you can use it with any camera that you've got. It's just if you want to print it large, then, you know, a DSLR or a mirrorless is the way to go. But if you really wanted to just try this out, and that's how I scout out objects to see if they'll work, I just whack around them with my phone and then play with them in Photoshop, and I'll show you that later on. So once again, we'll focus, we'll take that snap. And the beauty of having no cloud is I don't have to hurry. The light's not going to change. There's no cloud movement behind this object, so I can just take my time. So again, I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. And I will have to adjust the legs slightly on this one. There we go. Let's get it back up level. Let's make sure we're focused on the same spot, so it's our second level. Just going to adjust this very slightly. And there's 3. So I'm not going to bore you and make you watch all the way around. So let me whiz round and I'll talk to you at the end. I think you can tell that the wind has really picked up here. I'm shielding the microphone, but boy is it picked up. And there's a really nice little foreground element here of a couple of pieces of wood holding back this dune. So I don't know whether I will incorporate that later on or not. In the normal Pep Ventosa style, you wouldn't see it because it'll be its opacity will be lowered, but you do get the opportunity to use some elements and enhance them in the final image. So I'll consider this little piece of wood and see whether I want to play with that or not. But at the moment, we've taken 25 images. I've done about almost 270 degrees. I can't go any further around because there's bushes at the back. So I'm going to do 1 or 2 more, and then we'll leave it there, and then we'll be back off to the studio. Studio, what am I talking about? Back to the office, and that's where we'll pick up and do some editing. So here we go. Well, hi, welcome back to the office. Let's jump straight back in. So previously we've just been round that little hut at Semaphore, and we've gone round in a great big circle and we've been photographing it. I didn't complete a 360 degree rotation, taking those images, because just behind that hut was thick bushes and the land was very uneven, so I was unable to get round the back. Now normally I would do a 360 if I can, but you can use this technique just using a 180. You know, I managed to do about 270 degrees, so I got 3/4 of the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import those files into Photoshop, and we're going to import them and assign each image on its own little layer, and then from there we're going to
play around with those layers and adjust them, and yeah, I'll take you through that. And that's really Pep Ventosa's style. That's his work process. It's taking multiple images, generally around a central subject, importing it into Photoshop, and then playing with those layers to give a, I suppose Thomas Heaton calls it a painterly or an impressionist type look. Because we're doing a building, I'm expecting probably a more cubist style of image. So yeah, so impressionist, it may not be the foreground, and the bushes around may give an impressionist look, but I think the image itself will probably have a technical feel to it because sharp angles rather than soft leaves and that you usually get with trees. So let's jump in, and we'll take you through the process, and it'll be a voyage of discovery because I've no idea what we're going to get either. So let's jump in and see what we can get together. Okay, so well, first we're going to import all our files. So I'm coming up to File, Script, and Load Files into Stack. So that'll just Photoshop will ask me where those files are. I'll select them all, and then from that point Photoshop will import them. So we'll just browse for those. So we are desktop. There's our files that I've taken the other day. I'm just going to select them all. So you can do that by dragging your mouse up and through them, or select top or the bottom one, hold down Shift and click the bottom one selected. Apologies for, you can hear neighbour's dog giving a little bark. I hope it settles down. I hope it's not barking at me, otherwise we'll be here an awful long time. And yes, so we'll open those. Now you notice in Photoshop it asks, do you want to attempt to automatically align those images? If I was doing a focus stack, I'd probably say yes and get it to take all those layers and align them by the content so that they're pretty much, you know, one sat on top of the other. But because we're going to be moving each layer, each file separately, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to click OK. So if that was selected, then unselect it, and then we just click OK. And that will take a moment or two, so I suppose we'll wait for it to run its course. Now you can see that's taken a little while to complete. I've not edited these images at all. All I've done is exported them from, in my case, Capture One, but you could export them directly from Lightroom or whatever your software of choice is. What I possibly should have done is maybe reduce the image size by half, because these GFX files are just huge, just ginormous, and probably larger than I need just for this tutorial. But as I only like to do things once, I'm going to go through and actually edit the files themselves rather than a cut down version just for this tutorial, because that would mean I'd have to go away and redo it all for myself as well. So so the full size files in here, and there is about 27, 28 of them, I think, something like that. Okay, so we're in. And the first thing to notice is that we have the first image that we took is on the top. It's placed at the top of the file, and right at the very bottom is the last image that we've taken. Now I want them the other way around. I want our first image to be at the bottom of the stack, and our latest image, the newest image, at the top. So how I'm going to do that, I'm just going to select the top layer that you've got here, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and click on the bottom layer, and that selects them all. I'm then going to come up to the layer option in Photoshop, and I'm going to come down to Arrange and Reverse. So now I've reversed them, we've got the our first image at the bottom of the stack. Now the reason why I want that is because that's where we started, and so I want to use that as my base image, and then each successive layer going round, I want to build upon that image as we go round. And there's a little trick here that I think I failed to mention in my first video on the Pep Ventosa style. I'll pop that in the description below if you prefer that one. The difference between this tutorial and the last tutorial is the last one focused on organic subjects of trees, bushes, that sort of thing. Whereas this one I wanted to see if it would work and give you a more technical feel on architecture. In this case, I'm using this little hut, but that could be anything. It could be a building. It could be anything. So yes, so I want that to be the starting block really for going round, and so that'll be the key image of where we begin. So hence this, I want that one to be at the bottom of the stack, and then everything else is layered on top. But there's a little trick that I didn't do last time, and that was duplicating this bottom layer, so the first image that I have. And I can never remember if it's Option or Command, so I think it's Option, and then drag the image, the layer up, and then it gives you, yeah, you can see there, it gives you a copy. So I've got this layer is duplicate of each other, and this one I want to take all the way to the very top. So I've got the same image at the top and the same image at the bottom. The reason for that, well, the reason become apparent later on is because we'll lose a lot of the base image because we're going to put all these little layers are all going to be overlaid all the way up to the top. And I just want to reinforce what that first image looked like, so that feel. So that's why I've just popped it up at the top, and you'll see that at the very end. Okay, so now we have all our layers, and they're arranged in the right order for me. So that's the oldest one, so the initial image at the bottom. We've made a copy and we've popped that image at the top. Now you can see that all these files, all these layers are visible. So I don't need that. I need to come all the way down to the bottom. I hold it down Shift and select the bottom one, and then I think it's Option again. If I click on the little eye icon here, there we go, it deselects the eye on all of those layers and just leaves it on the very bottom layer. So now I can see the bottom of that stack. You can see all these layers all above are all switched off. And I suppose this is the starting point of the Pep Ventosa style, is this is where we start, and then from here we can build on all those images going up. So let's make a start. So let's switch on our next image up, and I'm now going to just reduce the opacity. So the secret to this is that we reduce the opacity on all the layers that sit on top of our bottom one, or as we going up, and as we go up the layers, they slightly more reduce in opacity, so they're more and more transparent, and they show more and more of the layers underneath. And as we go, you can also change the layer effect here of how they're blended. You can see, if I just move over, you can see how it's changing on the different blends that we've got on here. Now, there are several of these layer blends that work really, really well with Pep Ventosa. They are darken, they are lighten, they are screen, linear dodge add, lighter color, overlay, soft light, hard light. They're generally the ones that I tend to use as we go up, and you will see how they adjust and change the feel of each layer. There's no real answer to which one you should use. I think it's your own style will dictate which one you choose. So you will probably flick through each of these and go, oh, I like that one, select, and then adjust from that point onwards. So how do we start? So we're on this next to bottom layer, and then what we'll do here, I'm going to reduce the opacity to around about 80%. There we go. So you can see on here, you can see the underlying layer, and you can see that it's offset. And remember earlier on when we were going to import them, we could have asked Photoshop to align them. Maybe with architecture it's a better way to go. I don't know. I might attempt that later on and see if it works out better than the manual way in which I'm going to do it. Being a bit of a control freak, I prefer to do it manually because there's sometimes you might want to offset it. So we have this layer. You can see the layer underneath, and I'm just moving it so that it sort of fits the one that's underneath. And in this case, my visual cue is this top piece of the of the hut. So I want as many of these layers, if I can, to adjust them so that that particular focus point is quite consistent. When we're doing organic trees, the focus point is generally the trunk. So we would align the images up around, all the tree images around the trunk. In this case, I'm going to adjust them all so that they all sit in and around the peak of this little hut. So we have that one, and I'm quite happy where it's at. Now we need to look at what are these layer blends. So we've got darken, we've got multiply, we've got lighten, we've got screen, we've got light, dodge, add, lighter color, overlay, soft light, and hard light. I think I actually like lighten for this one. And that's it. Let's move on to the next one. So I'll go through a few of these. There's 28 of them. I'm not going to bore you by going through every single one. But you remember that we used 80% opacity on the layer below. So this one's going to be slightly less. So I'm going to come down to 77. And now we adjust that layer so that we can sort of by eye. And when I said by eye, it's probably better if I use my artificial eyes and using Command plus, just zoom in a little touch. And let me just adjust that so that it sits quite close. And then I'm just going to use the arrow keys to adjust it just like that. Okay, so then we check the way we wish to add our layer blend. And I actually think I quite like soft light for this one. It might be a bit too dark. Let me just have a look at darken. No, I think I'll go for darken for this one. There was too much contrast. It was too dark, I think, in and around where the window is. So I like that as the overall look. So we'll move on to the next layer. And we were at 78, I think, so we'll come down to 75 for this one. Again, I'll zoom in. I'll adjust the layer so that it sits nicely around this point. Let's come back out. Let's look at our layer. See what layer we want for this one. I quite like light in there. Let's see, but screen's very good. Overlay's a bit too dark for the time being. So, pin light a little flat, but not too bad. Normal. Pin light, so normal. So you'll be flipping between them and just seeing which you actually prefer. I quite like pin light there actually. Shows off these. No, I'll lose a little bit there. No, we'll change that. I'll lose a little bit of the definition just here I want to see that, so I'm going to come back and I'm going to go for a lighter colour. No, don't like that one either. Let's go back. I think let's go soft light. Okay. And then once again, I think we were 75, so I'll come down to 72. Let's zoom in. Let's adjust this image so that it matches as best we can. Nudge it with the little arrow key. Pop back out. Let's change our layer. Quite like screen, I like that bright feel. And yeah, that's what we can do. We can continue doing this layer upon layer as we go, adjusting each layer to your heart's content. And yeah, so I won't bore you by going through every single one of these. I've got quite a few to get through. So let me go through those. And if there's anything that I think that is interesting or a concern as I go through, we'll pop back and we'll have a chat. An anomaly has just occurred as I was going through these layer stacks, and I just wanted to draw your attention to it because it's a bit of I suppose it's a bit of an artistic decision, possibly. If you remember earlier on in the video, we were talking about that log that came into the image, into the foreground when I was almost completed the image sequence as I was going round, and I said it might make an interesting foreground image, foreground interest in the final image. Well, I've got to that point where that log has introduced itself into the stack, and I'm not enamoured. So I've decided I'm going to eliminate that because it does interfere with the eye. So let me just show you what I mean. You can see that the log is introduced here on this layer. So if I switch it on, you can see it's introduced itself here, and I don't like it, especially if I consider that the next one up is going to be even more prominent, and so we'd have a series of these ghostly pieces of wood like coming through some of the foreground. I think it's a bit of a distraction, so I'm going to eliminate it. And that is very simple to eliminate. I'm just going to come up to the erase button up here, give me my little eraser. I'm going to make sure that it's a soft brush, so the hardness is down to 0. The size is fine because it can cover this, and I'm just going to eliminate it from that image, from that layer, just like that. Simple as that. But what I will have to do now is, as I go up each of these layers, and I'm on to 36%, I'm going to have to eliminate it from each of the successive layers, just removing it like this. And you can see it's leaving a little bit of a lighter colour underneath. Don't worry about that. We'll soon get rid of that. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to adjust our central point, and then we're going to think about what we're going to use as our layer style, just like that. So we've only got a couple more to do, so if you wish to stay with me, and we'll finish these last couple. Now, normally on my last couple, I tend to use a dark layer blend, and then the final one is a light layer blend. You see, I'm just eliminating that little piece there. I'm going to zoom in. And we're going to just like that. So I'm going to use a darken here. Let's get our last one up, and we're around about 32. Let's adjust that one. Let's make sure that we get rid of that, the last of that little post. Let's get rid of that. There we go. Layer style. I think probably, let's have a little look. Overlay for this one. And now we're back to our top image. We're back to our final image, the bottom image that I copied and put at the top. So let's get to this one. Now, the opacity for this one will depend on your aesthetic feel. But the first thing I'm going to do, and it should match up pretty well, which it does, because we use that as our first image right at the very bottom. And so it has actually matched throughout. So there we go. So that's our final image. I've got it at 35%, but you can take it way down or you can bring it way up. It just depends on your feel. I think around 35% works for me, because it introduces this nice foreground that I had at the beginning, and you've got some ghost trees, maybe just a touch less. Maybe just a touch less, about 28. That looks about right. So we've still got some of the ghost trees from those behind, and then we need to decide on our layer style, whether we go lighten, screen, overlay looks a little dark for me. So, got to be careful that we don't lose all that foreground that we work so hard to bring in. So I think probably, let me just go down one, see what this one is overlay. And I'll bring this at, I'm going to increase this one. And so I can then, this one, which is at normal, I can then set to darken. And that keeps that foreground in. There we go. Now we see a ghost of that foreground in. We've got some of these ghost trees in the background. We've got our central point, which is relatively focused. And so, because that's the most defined part of the image, your eye should work its way up to that point, you know, taking in this foreground, this like kaleidoscopic sort of merry-go-round look, and then finally that point. So that's hopefully where we go. That's the general gist of how this is supposed to work. So now I need to save this as it is and then take it out and do some final adjustments and editing. And if all that works, then there it is.